So for this project, I thought it would be cool to run through the parts before they're fixed this time, so we can have a really good before-after comparison of how things looked before all this work went in. And maybe in the process of showing the condition of some of these parts, I could also try my best to demonstrate how these dampers are really interesting and why they're different from most dampers that you might see. You know, granted, this is technology from the 90s. These were GrpN struts made by ProDrive, as I mentioned. Those struts use these Bilstein 50mm inserts, which are sort of a motorsport standard, especially for 90s cars and Group A cars. Even the M3 suspension that I got uses the same, basically the same unit. ProDrive created this piece along with some others, which I'll get some close-ups of. This is a hand fabricated damper housing, and for Group A it was almost identical. The ears that pinch the spindle or the upright on the Group A were larger because the Group A version used a fabricated spindle. And as we know, for Group N, they use production car spindles, much like the production car you see behind me, which is why I bought these, because they'll fit. The big change came when Group A started using the 51mm dampers. Things started to get a little different. The easiest way to tell that you have a 51 is because it has a Schrader valve for the gas fill. I think they might be adjustable, but I've never seen them, so I couldn't tell you. This is just based on advice from my friends. So when we get into this, I'll get some close-ups of some parts. You can see what's going on. So after tearing down the first strut, this is basically what we've got. Starting with the lock ring. These are pretty standard lock ring, as you'd see on almost every coilover. These are in decent shape. They have some scratches on them and some kerfing when people didn't use the right tool. I'll try to clean them up a little bit, but I'm going to reuse these. We have this upper seal, and you can see this one's distended. This is energized lip seal. This might have happened on install. It might have happened for some other reason. I'm not sure. These are 70mm OD, 50mm ID. This particular one is 8mm tall, but the ProDrive catalog calls for 7, so I ordered 7. See how that works. This seal is placed on top of this piece here. This piece threads on top of the damper tube, like that. The reason this piece exists is because the way this damper is cooled is by recirculating 60 cc of oil from the bottom back to the top, and again around and around and around. And the way that's done is via this hose and this fitting, which goes on this top piece. So at the bottom of the strut tube, there's 2 holes. One is a fill hole, which simply gets capped, and the other is for this fitting, to which the hose attaches. Actually, it's for a fitting to which this one-way valve attaches. This has a little diaphragm inside it, a spring, which is missing. So what happens is the oil, this strut tube compresses. There's a volume of oil here. It gets pushed down, out the fitting I just showed you, through the one-way valve, around the strut, to the top where it's sealed through these 3 seals on the cap, and then back down again through the hose as the strut goes up and down. So it's kind of neat. These weren't totally functional when I got them because they weren't assembled correctly. Oh, here's the spring. So the spring goes in here, like so. Then this cap goes on. And there's a crush washer there. So there were a lot of problems with this when I got it. One was the way it was assembled. I'll get into that in a second. Another was that these hoses are crimped and damaged, so I'll be ordering new hoses. A couple of the fittings weren't even tight, so there's no oil in the strut. Of course, there's still oil and gas inside the piston itself, inside the sealed unit, but not inside the body as it was supposed to be. So we'll be fixing that through new hoses, new seals, even new fittings. I got these really cool alloy plugs to step it up from these damaged ones. When I received these, one of the heads was even broken off. I had to drill it out. There were a lot of problems. What you're looking at here is the base of the strut housing. This is all hand fabricated, TIG welded. This slot is for the camber bolt, as you'd see on a normal car. This hole is for where the damper gets held in, fastened in, and held down. These holes are for the oil return, just to squish out through the cap and then back down. So this is a neat piece. This came originally with yellow zinc. As you can see, it's been worn off. The previous owner painted it with spray paint. I've stripped the spray paint off mostly. I'm going to have them powder coated. Like a lot of the other parts here, actually. So a couple other problems when I got them. This is just a standard GrpN strut top. This is a concave washer that's designed to ride on the inner race. As you can see, it was upside down and it bit into the outer race. So this was just locking up the steering, essentially. The reason this bearing exists is so you can freely steer the car. So just a stupid assembly problem that was like really at like a normal like auto mechanics 101 level mistake. So I've ordered new hardware for this everywhere. I've got nice new nuts to retain the strut inside the housing. Got new nuts for the top mount. These are mechanical locking. Got my new O-rings for inside here. These have been cleaned out. The springs here, which might be out of the frame a little bit, these are just painted. I'm going to have these powder coated silver again, sandblasted and powder coated. And then this is a couple of the spring perches here. You can see that these have been stripped. They're spray painted black. I'll have these powder coated as well and try to clean up some of the galling on them. This has an Allen wrench to retain, the set screw to retain orientation on the strut tube. And there's a slot here to do so. A couple of these were missing. One of them was a bolt. It had like a big bolt in it. So some repairs to do there. These are marked left and right. I'm also going to remark them. This one here has S2DEZ-535. So maybe that was a customer code. Maybe that was the person who built the car or built the damper. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of cool like hand etchings on these. Looking forward to restoring it. This will also be cleaned up and powder coated. This is the spring perch for the top. It's nice to show the parts now. It's a big mistake I always make. I never show the parts before they're done, then I show them when they're done. It's like, yeah, well, looks fine. What's wrong? But yeah, you can see these were pretty hammered on. Even the hose is just being kinked here. This is some protective heat shrink that was on them, but it's missing in a lot of places. Stainless fittings. So thanks for watching. I'm going to make a couple installations of this one. As you can see, progress as I have less time to do serious M3 work and grinding in the mornings before work. I might be able to come down here and tinker for half an hour, put these together. So yeah, stay tuned. Thanks.